Good evening. I am Kelly Neitlinger with episode number 2 of LifeForceRadio, biohacking survival to thrival by living a clean life, green life, and rewilding. In episode number 2, I will discuss a few of the health changes that I made to go from merely surviving to thriving. And I want to share with you some of my findings. So I want to focus today on water, light, magnetism, exercise, food, herbs, rewilding, and sleep. So I'll cover a few of these topics and expound on them slightly, and then with subsequent episodes we will go into further depth with those topics. And eventually I will be interviewing experts in the health field as well. So first we'll start with water and some of the things that I have discovered. So water is very important, and actually I just recently started filtering water. However, for example, right now I'm staying in a hotel and I'm traveling around the country doing different events, and so I don't really know of a water filter that can go on any hotel faucet. However, what I do is at this hotel anyway, I'm using the pre-filtered lemon water dispenser that is downstairs in the lobby as my procurement for my water. And then what I do is I just have this BPA free water bottle. I prefer glass, but in this case, this one will help structure my water. And the reason why the structure of water is important is water is always naturally structured. So as water flows down a stream or a river, it's flowing over rocks and gravel, or if it's seeping up out of a spring, it's seeping up through rocks, and it's often coming up and going through sand, and that is further filtering it. And in the case of Alaskan streams where I live, there's a lot of moss as well, and moss is an antibacterial agent. There's over 350 types of moss, and so it's a natural additional way to filter your water as well. And so not only does it filter it, it's actually structuring the water. So it was discovered that there is a fourth phase of water. There's liquid, solid, and vapor in water, but now it's known through science that there's a fourth phase of water. And the easiest way to describe it, it's referred to as easy water or exclusion zone water. And it's a little bit like gelatinous water. And so you might have made Jello or seen gelatinous substances like chia seeds when they're soaked in water, and they form this easy water. Well, when I'm using this water bottle here, I shake it vigorously for about a minute, and it actually changes the structure of the water in the hexagonal shape of the molecule. And so it actually is more similar to the cytoplasm of all of your cells. So every cell in our body needs cytoplasm or easy water. And so in this case, I'm trying to mimic nature's structured water. So when water runs through modern systems, it's unstructured and it loses its memory of some things, but it retains other memories. So for example, I shouldn't say it loses its memory, but its memory can change based on the influences that are opposed upon it. So for example, let's say you have the Flint City water system. So you're going to be going through a lot of old pipes and right angles and lead pipes and other, corrosive type elements that are in that water system. And so not only does it change the structure of the water because it's no longer a natural flow of rivers pulled down by gravity, it's also right angles, and it's actually changing the memory of the water by whatever chemicals, i.e. lead or other substances that might be in the area will retain in the water's memory. So anyways, back to the cellular importance. The easy water is encased in the cell membrane, and each organ in our body is comprised of a multitude of cells. Basically, we are a colony of cells. And so the root cause of all disease is actually cellular dysfunction. When we lose the ability to make cells or new cells that work, then we lose the ability to retain health. And so our easy water contained within our cellular membranes and our cytoplasm is very important, and it also helps for the next topic that I'll be covering with light as well, and I'll explain that a little bit further here in a minute. So that's one way that water is very important, and I'm trying to biohack my water system. I have property in Michigan that has artesian springs on it, and they're very cold springs. It's one of the most unique ecosystems in the country. It has the sixth most endangered plant species on the property, and the number one most endangered plant species in the state of Michigan on the property. And part of it is that it flows through this cold artesian seep through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet of sand before it comes out of the ground. And so that's also another form of easy water. So the water is very structured and very cold when it comes up out of the ground, and it's full of a lot of minerals as well. So the cellular restructuring of the water makes it very healthy because it emulates what's inside of our cell's cytoplasm. And so also within our cellular membranes, there's of course nucleus, and there inside of that are our mitochondria. And so the mitochondria that occur inside of our cellular membrane help create ATP, which creates cellular energy in our bodies, which of course without that we wouldn't survive. And so that structured water helps in that creation of ATP, especially when reacted to light. But first let me cover a couple other things and as far as water that are really important for overall health. So it's also now known through science, through studies, that cold thermogenesis is very important. And so again, the cold springs in Michigan are a wonderful place. I have a couple videos where I have talked about the springs there on the property, and I will give it a cold soak mixed in with a near infrared sauna, and also red light therapy. And I also do a lot of open water swimming. I was the third person to ever swim the Straits of Mackinac, which that first crossing was over a 5-mile crossing, 6.75 miles to be exact, in 58 to 64 degrees Fahrenheit water with no wetsuit. I was told I would die if I used no wetsuit. So of course, because I like to push my body and I know my limits, I did it without a wetsuit. And now it's kind of in vogue. There's hundreds of people that have now swum the Straits of Mackinac, but I believe I've swum it the most. I've done it, I can't remember if it's 6 or 7 times now. I'd have to look back through my records. I believe it's 6. I planned to do it the 7th time last year, and it didn't work out in my schedule. But anyway, so I practice a lot of cold thermogenesis through open water swimming in the Great Lakes of Michigan as late as November in the frigid water there. And it really helps to kind of biohack your cells, and it's a way to really help your mitochondria as well. And so 3 days of cold thermogenesis helps, raises your cardiolipids in your cellular membrane. And so those cardiolipids are very, very important, of course, in all cellular processes. So that's very important. And next I'm going to talk about light. And so I'm actually wearing some blue blocking glasses, and these are the kind that I'll use maybe when I'm doing interviews. It's a little hard for me to see the screen and for you to see my eyes if I use the ones that I normally wear, which are amber, and they go around the sides as well. So I've recently learned the importance of limiting your blue light. And blue light actually includes incandescent lights. And then this hotel light is actually even worse because it's an LED light. So that full spectrum light that you think you might have here, you might think, well, what's wrong with that? Well, first of all, it's an LED light, so it has a lot of flicker, and there's a lot of other reasons why it's not healthy, but it also has a lot of blue light. So we're surrounded by all of this non-natural light, and we've always taken it for granted as modern Americans that it's not a big issue, but in fact it's deteriorating our health. It's creating deuterium in our cells, and what happens is we have melanopsin and neuropsin, which are retinal pathways in our eyes that absorb this blue light. And blue light is great in the morning. It helps wake you up, but unfortunately what it does is it tells our body that it's time to wake up in the afternoon and the evening, and especially after sunset. It's really important to not only limit your blue light, but to eliminate your blue light after sunset. And so it's nearly sunset here, although it's pretty cloudy here. I'm actually in the Twin Cities in Minnesota today, traveling. But so not only is it important, very, very vitally important, to limit your non-native light as far as the blue light spectrum, it's also very important to get as much sunlight as you can, especially early in the morning, right at sunrise, and make yourself grounded to the earth. And so the light, by the way, including the natural blue light or even non-natural blue light that you get, is very much reactive in your body. And the red light spectrum is actually very healthy to your body. And so if you're not getting enough natural sunlight, because maybe you live in a northern climate in the winters when you're not going to be able to get a lot of really good, healthy, radiation from the sun, and then you might have to supplement with a full spectrum tanning bed, which we've often been taught is not healthy, but in fact, in limited dosage, it's very, very vitally important to our health if we live in northern climates or we're not out in the natural sunlight enough. And then also red light therapy. So right here behind me, I have an LED red light. Let's see if I can turn it so you can kind of see it. And so this one, is not very hot. It's an LED, but in this case, the LED is in the red light spectrum, so it's much more healthy. And then you can also use like the heating lamp style lights as well. And the red light can actually absorb into your cells of your body, and it actually basically creates your cells and your blood to shunt. And what happens is that light, basically, we're all solar beings. We are very similar to plants in the way that they use chlorophyll to photosynthesize. We use light to create our energy, and it creates ATP in our cellular systems. So we have become vampires as modern Americans, and we have screwed up our circadian rhythm. Every cell in your body has a circadian clock, and we have completely screwed it up, which is creating this enormous amount of exponential disease in this country and even around the world, in a lot of countries that are creating this fake environment. And so we need to rewild and get back to nature, get back to the sun, get back grounded to the Earth's electromagnetic field, which leads me into magnetism. And so the Earth has a negative electromagnetic field at the surface. And so when I was a kid, I always felt really healthy. I hated wearing shoes. And then, of course, becoming school age, that became not cool. And, I had to wear shoes because I was in school. But I always all summer long. I take my shoes off, run through the earth, and I always feel the happiest when I do that. I love to walk on beaches, and part of the reason why we love to lay on a beach or walk on a beach and we like to take our shoes off and we feel better isn't just that we're in the sunlight, we're in the fresh air or the freshwater air blowing or the saltwater air. It's actually because we're becoming grounded to the earth. So even if you can do it just for a few minutes a day, that would help. But the more that you can rewild and basically rewire your electromagnetic field, the better you'll be. And so if you think back to Native Americans and other indigenous people around the world, they always slept on the ground, on animal skins, and they're very connected to the earth. And you always saw them sitting on the ground when they would have their important meetings, and they understood the value of that. And shamans around the world do as well. And even a lot of like yogis and people in other parts of the world that practice different kinds of unique martial arts that are very ancient remedies, ancient wisdom, they are connected to the earth. So we need to rewire our bodies through water, light, magnetism. And along with rewilding, it's also important to talk about and to cover the importance. So we think we're above nature. We think human beings are way up here and every other natural thing is down here. But actually we are created from cyanobacteria. Ancient cyanobacteria were really just a bunch of bacteria and a bunch of cells put together. And so we are nature, and we need all of these things in nature to help live in symbiotic relationship with all other living things, even including all of the micro molecules and microorganisms within our own bodies. So we are nature. So in rewilding, we also need to, breathe deeply and to take in fresh air. And we're actually doing something called forest bathing. And when we forest bathe, we're breathing in the essential oils of all of the trees and the plants around us. We're also creating micro-vaccinations for our body, which is wonderful. So these micro-vaccinations are actually very, very healthy, and they're creating hormesis in our body. And what that means is we're creating a hermetic response by giving ourselves a little tiny dose of bad bacteria that we breathe in that are just floating in the air. You don't always see things like that because they're microorganisms, but sometimes you've probably seen dust or pollen blowing in the air, so that might give you an idea what might be there microscopically. So we're breathing in good bacteria, bad bacteria, the essential oils of all living things as far as plants and trees, and even fungi from mycorrhizal and other pollen that's floating and coursing through the air, and also things like spores from mushrooms as well. So that's all very, very important. It helps reduce our anxiety and our stress levels. And so even if you don't live in a wild area, or you can't visit wild areas, at least go to your park or sit on the grass or touch your feet to the earth, or get out in your garden and do some gardening. Next I'll cover, just real quickly, food. I'll be covering this a lot more in depth at a later time, and I want to try to keep these videos short so I can get them uploaded. But next, one thing that I do quite often, and I have been doing, is I eat a lot of raw green smoothies. But by the way, I also should talk about detox. And so I was consuming all these really healthy nutrients in these raw green smoothies, mostly vegetables that I was consuming, but I wasn't really getting that much better. I was at death's door. I had massive infections coursing through my blood and all of my cells, basically, and it was affecting everything in my body. And so it wasn't until I learned how to start detoxing that I could actually start to absorb the nutrients. So I've done all kinds of different detoxes in the last year, from a cellular detox to parasite cleanse to liver cleanse, gallbladder flush, all those kinds of things, and I'll cover those more in depth later. But so I eat raw green smoothies, grass-fed meats, vegetables, a lot of good oils, eliminated the bad fats from my diet. I actually used to eat McDonald's, and I would actually buy the cheapest oil I could find because I was always very frugal, not understanding that it was coating my arteries and basically killing me probably faster than almost anything else that I could do to my body. So now I try to, consume 50 to 60% of my calories a day in some types of fats or oils. And I use a lot of MCT. I do bulletproof type coffee where I add some MCT and some ghee. I'm actually, allergic to milk products, so the Kerrygold butter doesn't seem to work for me. It stuffs up my head almost immediately. I consume a lot of cod liver oil and krill oil and fish oil. Just try to start off my days with a lot of healthy fats. Low on carbs, although I do eat carbs that are vegetables. Eat a lot of raw eggs and also low cook temperature eggs. They're a lot healthier, and they also have easy water in their yolks as well. And then I consume fish eggs from Alaska from the wild whenever possible, and I like to ferment them as well. And I do a lot of other ferments and a lot of other fermented foods. So let's see. I'll talk a little bit about some herbs, just kind of covering a few of these things, or health molecules. So kind of a combination. Now, they're not all herbs. I do what's called healthy salt. It has more minerals than Himalayan salt. I consume a lot of cinnamon and ginger and garlic and turmeric and vitamin D and vitamin A and K. And I take a lot of other supplements. I can cover some of my stacks that I do a little bit later. I like to also, get in exercise, usually 4 to 5 times a week, sometimes every single day. Depends on where I'm at and what's going on in my life. Right now I'm traveling. I'm, working long hours and traveling and living out of a hotel for most of the last 4 months. So it's been really a busy, hectic schedule. But even so, I try to do some nitric oxide dumps, which what I mean by that is I do like a little bit of warm up, a huge sprint, whatever I'm doing, whether it's swimming, whether it's on a treadmill, whether it's rebounding, which is my preferred method of indoor type activity, or even outdoor if I drag my rebounder outdoors. And it helps raise BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which basically allows your stem cells to turn into brain cells instead of fat cells, for example. Just one example. But so basically you're alternating between, some people call it interval training, but it's a little bit more focused than that, but that's a good way to describe it. And then I really focus on my sleep as I age. Sometimes I take melatonin. I've read mixed studies. I know Dr. Jack Kruse says that you should try to limit as much supplements as you can so that you don't inhibit your natural melatonin production pathways. So I believe there's a lot of truth to that. However, I was so sick, I was nearly dead, and so sleep is very vitally important. So for now, I still do take melatonin, especially when I'm traveling. But I also take valerian root and a lot of other calming agents like chamomile and things like that, and that helps me get into a little bit of a deeper sleep. I do like the travel face goggle things, the little sleep covers for your eyes, and then I try to black out the room whenever possible. When I'm traveling in a hotel, even putting towels over all of the just weird lights that occur even through the curtains, or all these ridiculous night lights. They'll disturb your circadian rhythm of all of your cells and all your cell processes. And so you really need to get that sleep so that your body can regenerate itself and it's ready for the next day. Let's see, what else can I talk about? Real quick, I'll talk about a few nootropics, and then I'm going to call it a night here with this. This one's already 24 minutes long, so hopefully I can upload it. I'm still learning how to do this with these longer videos. So nootropics, some of my nootropic stack are just a couple simple ones that are very common. Green tea, it has EGCG, which guards against DNA, and it's a power phenol. Also resveratrol, which is also a power phenol, and it activates autophagy. And so you don't have to drink wine and then worry about detoxing it, because it can really affect your liver and cause a lot of cellular energy to be diverted from other processes to come take care of that alcohol. So I prefer to just take it in the supplement form, and I also eat a lot of red grapes as well. And then green coffee fruit, which also creates and increases BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. And just recently started taking sunflower lecithin, and I always take fish oil, krill oil, that kind of thing. So a lot of different healthy oils. And then I also eat a lot of blueberries, and I pick a lot of wild foods whenever possible, and that's a whole different series I'll be talking about, but most of my diet is wild foods. But 6 weeks of consumption of blueberries increases the killer cells, which they actually increase even more if you take the spiced cardamom, which increases the power of the blueberries, and also black pepper and things like that. So, and so then I do a lot of red light therapy. It's very, very important in my life every single day, and I do a lot of near infrared saunas whenever possible to detox and for additional red light therapy benefits as well. So those are just a few of the biohacks, and I'll talk more about all of this in depth at another time, but be well.